And we're live. Good afternoon. BounceBack Philippines, BounceBack Network, and NADPOP and NADPOP DPO Central, and of course our friends from PH-CERT. Magandang hapon. Welcome to the second test episode of Privacy Fridays and FightBack Cybersecurity. We're joined today by our colleagues from NADPOP, Mr. Titus Manuel. Magpakita ka naman, Titus Manuel. Yan, teka. Asa na si Pogi-Pogi, batang-batang Titus Manuel? Yan.
Yeah, thank you, salamat. Maraming salamat po. Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat, guys. Nice to see you guys again. Magandang hapon, Sam.
Oo, salamat at okay yung signal mo ngayon, no? Oo, salamat at okay yung signal mo. Yep. Ano tayo ngayon? Age before beauty. Welcome din natin ang, again, batang-bata din at ang ganda-gandang si Miss Arnie Barcelo. Sis Arnie, magandang hapon. Yan na.
Marhay na hapon.
Tutuwa si Sis Arnie. Teka, i-add natin sa screen. Nagka-agawang kami ni Sean. Sandali lang, wala ka pa sis. Ayun, lumabas na.
There you go.
Yes. Magandang hapon ulit. Good afternoon. Good evening at good morning sa ibang nakikinig sa atin dyan. All across the globe. Sa ating mga ka-NADPOP, ka-BounceBack, welcome to Privacy Fridays and FightBack Cybersecurity. Yes, masaya ito ngayon, no? Magandang discussion natin. Sige.
Oo, tama-tama. Kumusta naman sa UST? Di ba sem break nyo na? Or term break?
Yes. Today is our last day of final exam.
Wow.
And then, so dapat ngayon ay graduation na. Pero we move it to July for some reasons, of course. Ayun. So graduation na ngayon ng batch 2021. So sa mga nag-graduate ngayon, congratulations. Kayo ang pandemic batch.
Ayan, pandemic batch. Oo nga. Oo. Kaya palang aliwalas na ng ano mo, hindi ka na masyadong stress, no, Sis Arnie?
Ay, actually, hindi naman ako stress sa work. Yun ang something na proud ako.
Yeah, si Rich Joe, bumati from Iligan City. Oo, may fans ka dun from Iligan, si Rich Joe, member din natin sa NADPOP. Okay, ipakilala natin ang mga panelists natin ngayon, no? So ito, napakagagaling na mga data protection officers ito. At the same time, alam mo, Sis Arnie, Sir Titos, alam mo itong dalawang to talaga. Pagka sila nagsalita, tumatahimik ang audience, Lalo na yung, tayo naman, lady before the gentleman, okay? Lalo na yung ipapakilala natin mamaya, pag pumasok siya sa conference room dati, tahimik lahat. Ito yung kwento kong bakit. Okay? Ipakilala muna natin, ito, again, ang ating kaibigan, and napakalaking supporter ng NADPOP po, si Miss Cheska Sasa Montes ng Union Bank. Okay, magandang hapon, Miss Sasa. Yan.
Hi! Good afternoon, everyone. Yan, mga ka-BounceBack and mga ka-NADPOP natin dyan, mga fellow DPO. So, magandang hapon. Friday, Thank God it's Friday.
Yes. PGIF, happy Friday. Oo. So, Sasa, kamusta na? Yung the best digital bank in the Philippines, di ba? Union Bank, no? So, kumusta na kayo dyan?
Ito, we're actually happy that, this is not just for the bank, but ang pinaka favorite kong award namin is yung most helpful bank in Asia.
Wow.
So, during the pandemic. So yun yung and we didn't really ask for it. We didn't ask for nomination and so on. We were just nominated by the public. So that's my most favorite. So I'm happy that everything that we're doing for our clients have resonated, not just here in the Philippines but also in Asia, diba? In general.
Grabe.
Yes. Maisingit ko, Sam and Titus. Alam niyo ba ang Union Bank? Isa yan sa number one mover ng hackathon. As in, years ba, ang mga 2015 pa, nag-hackathon na kami, U-Hack. Kaya ang galing-galing talaga ng Union Bank. So lahat ng mga innovations na bago.
Nagkakaroon din tayo ng bagong innovation campus sa Laguna. So soon, by next year, invite natin kayong lahat doon. Then tayo mag-webinar. Live seminar na tayo or workshop doon.
Oo.
Thank you, Union Bank, sa support.
Galing-galing. Yung Selyado 1 and 2. Yung Selyado 1 and 2, di ba? Partner nila tayo, kinuha nila tayo doon na partner.
Yes.
Ang dami talagang tulong ni Union Bank. Hindi lang kay NADPOP, pati si BounceBack, tinulungan din ni Union Bank. Alam niyo ba yun? Yung Union Bank Global Linker. Oo. So, dami nating mga entrepreneurs na tinulungan si Union Bank through BounceBack Philippines. So, ang galing talaga ng integration na ginawa Union Bank, especially this one. nakita ko yung mga truck nyo, yung mga banking on wheels, no? Na umiikot-ikot, no?
Ang galing.
Diba? So, yan. Oo.
Very dynamic.
Galing, welcome.
Salamat.
Welcome, Sasa. By the way, si Sasa po, pagdasal natin, she's going to take the bar. Yan. Future attorney Sasa
Sabi mo in-announce. Pressure tuloy siya.
Hindi, kaya mo Sasa yan.
Baka maudyot, Sam.
Hindi, lahat ng prayers natin, BounceBack,
Okay.
NADPOP, PH-CERT, ibigay natin kay future
Sige,
attorney Sasa.
pag-pray niyo po.
Okay? Okay?
Sige.
Okay, at ito na yung ating isang panelist. No? Ang hirap paghagilapin itong ano. Ito yung kinukwento ko, Titus, Arnie, Sasa, no, na pagka siya pumasok ng isang conference room, di ba, ingay, no? Ganyan, gulo-gulo. Pag pumasok na siya, biglang tatahimik.
Yeah,
Tahimik
authority
talaga
agad.
lahat. Lalo na sa National Privacy Commission. Hanggang ngayon, ganun pa rin ang oras pag pumasok talaga. Parang wala talagang yung karayom.
Yes.
Madidinig.
Yes. Kahit during the datos, no? Nag-talk din,
don't know.
meron din tayo doon.
Oo, talagang...
Everyone listens.
Oo, pag pumasok siya, although baka akala ng iba, kapatid siya ni chairman, di ba? Kasi, pero mas pagod, mas pogi to. Mas pogi. Okay? Okay? Ikaw na magpakilala. Titus Manuel, please.
Dapat yung pinakabata sa atin magpakilala dyan, yung ating magiging lawyer.
Ay, yes, si Sasa naman. Okay, tama.
Yung ating guest of honor today, our guest of honor.
Yeah, I'm introducing you to Attorney Kiko Acero of Bayantel.
Ay, meral ko na.
Ay, meron ko.
Basta meral ko na si Attorney Kiko.
Ibang ano yung Bayantel?
Ay, sorry. My God.
Bayan Center.
Bayan Center.
Biyernes naman yun. Okay. Welcome, Attorney Kiko. Maraming salamat. So, pinaunlokan mo kami ngayon. We know how busy you are. And then, salamat din kay RCE for allowing you to be here. Okay, kumusta naman ang Meralco, Attorney Kiko? So, transitioning from government to private sector. Ano ba yung kaibahan?
Hindi, mas it's an opportunity to put kung ano yung pinag-preach ko for several years into practice. Na, privacy is a journey. And, yun. Hindi ganun yung...
On-end question agad. Ang bilis namang magtanong ang audience natin.
First question.
Mamaya na yan.
May tanong agad.
Pero yun, privacy is a journey and we all have to buy in and it's about ethics and doing the right thing. Leadership, vulnerability. So yun, all these concepts that are supposed to be inside data privacy now getting applied.
Galing, ano? In fact, Sasa, Titus, Arnie, si Meralco had their own data privacy awareness week event.
Yes.
So,
ang cute nun. Maganda, magaling na move yun. Gawin
diba?
din natin yun, no? Parang gusto ko gawin yun.
Paki-flash nga uli yung comment na yun, Sean. Attorney Kiko, meron kang comment dito from Bon. Okay, bumata po si Attorney Kiko sa private firm. Na walang karoon ng stress. Tama ba?
It's the stress is different, but it's still there.
Okay. Teka, baka naman si Sasa magpunta ng government firm, baka mabaliktad naman. So, after, di ba? So, NPC, here. Okay, simulan na natin. So, really, last week, we tackled the highlights and impact of PAO 2021. Ito yung part 2. Kasi hindi natin natapos. Ang dami kasing content talaga information pack talaga yung itong PAO 2021 na to. Ang daming speakers, both local and foreign, Pero ang isang issue talaga na hinihintay ng lahat na sandali lang ginawa nung hapon, yung day 1, yung administrative fines, di ba? So, again, ano pa talaga? So, again, Attorney Kiko and future Attorney Sasa, what is your take on this upcoming administrative fines? Yan. Yung ating unang talakayan yan, okay?
Sige.
So, ladies first, no?
Okay. Sige. So for the banks, it's really difficult for us because we're also regulated by the BSP. So BSP also has its own set of administrative fines, regulations, circular. So as you know naman, bank industry is very regulated, and it's very strict. Like anti-money laundering pa lang, if you fail to comply with the 5 days to report, CTR, STR, penalty na yun agad. So, and then there's definite finite amounts. Okay. So, with the general comment, not just for me, but I'm airing the sentiment of my fellow DPOs in the bank, was that the variable approach in penalty might be construed as one, confiscatory. Second is the computation for which is going to be derived, which is the annual gross income, might be very difficult for us to compute, because in our industry, the income is differently computed as compared to other industries. So where do we draw the line there? So and in fact, we've been doing like open discussions with NPC on this. They're very open that we're talking with them. Actually, we have scheduled meetings now after this, and we'd like to try to have this kind of what do you call it, consensus, or for not just for the banks, I guess, but for our industry. We want them to understand yung regulatory landscape din namin. So that one. And then and we actually proposed for the first initial draft to put it in a graduated manner. So parang minor, major, grave, ganun. So, and then for minors, kind of defined, like for example, if you don't have a DPO, this is the amount of violation. For major, ano ba yung mga offenses ba doon, and then the grave one, yan. We want it to be finite, but the approach is on a variable one, and perhaps Attorney Kiko would have more insight about it.
Okay, thank you, Saka. Attorney Kiko.
Ayun, so taking off from that, the approach sana would have been better if from the bottom, there's that per data subject, kung ganun yung approach. Tapos may ano doon, no? As opposed to this na what if there are 100 complainants for different mag-a-add up yun when it's the same issue. So is it gonna be per issue? For example, it's you didn't provide access to data subject access rights. Wala kang ganun. Or medyo ineffective yung DSAR mo. So ang dami nag-complain. If there are 20 people who complain, or say 100 people who complain, let's put it at the 1%. Dun nila binase. So it's 100% of your gross income for the previous year. Confiscatory na siya. So there's no guidance on how that's going to be implemented. As opposed to a fixed fine per data subject or something non-issue. This is the issue. Therefore, ganun. There's no... They didn't explain that. Other issues are... they talk about the failure to adhere to transparency, legitimate purpose, and proportionality. Okay, fine. Pero in the next, in tier 1, they say failure to have a complete consent. Consent and notice are different paths by which you achieve transparency. So if you have an incomplete consent, that's your failure to abide by transparency. So automatic na ba yung dalawang if you have a failure of consent? Is that automatic to violations? It's not something that's I understand that it was done. This is something that they were thinking about even when I was there. So that was something that was in open discussion. But where we really had problems was what are the limits? Interestingly also, no one has ever seen the UP Econ study. We'd like to see that because, generally, I think that the idea of a fine is a good idea because it puts pressure on the controller. immediate pressure on the controller. If you look at the fines the way it's set up now, iikot pa yan na matagal. So from NPC to DOJ to court, and after the court trial, saka pa lang dadating yung fine. At which point, the lesson really, in terms of it being a deterrent, is gone. And we see that with the mobile lending institutions na ang tagal eh. So our criticism is on enforcement. How fast do we get justice for those who consider data privacy to be optional? And it's a long time. Fines will considerably shorten that process. Good in theory. But let's see nga, where the application goes. I appreciate that they created the tiers, but it's not, the tiers don't have that much sense in saying, like the GDPR division, where if it affects data subject rights, it's 2 to 4%, and if it doesn't affect data subject rights, it's 1 to 2%. At least yun malinaw, and it's simple. This one, you're going to ano pa?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, curious lang ako, no? Kasi iniisip ko din, is it time na ba talaga na magkaroon nito, na i-implement na siya? Kasi before, it is just like awareness, campaign, studying about the Data Privacy Act, embracing the culture muna, preparing the people, and then ngayon lumabas siya. And then naka-identify yung kanyang tier 1, tier 2, 3, and 4. Parang pag binasa mo, one, totoo na ba to? Second is, ganito ba siya katindi? Or tapos hindi ganun kalinaw yung nandun sa... for me, hindi siya ganun kalinaw. Pero pag siguro pag in-interpret natin sa mga nakikinig ngayon na gagawin natin today, kung pwedeng i-simplify siya para sa mga nakikinig, sa ating mga nagbe-business, sa ating mga na newcomers sa DPO, or sa mga estudyanteng nakikinig. Attorney Kiko, pwede ba nating explain yun? Yung tier 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Okay, first off, no, let's go to the rationale behind the fines themselves. Kasi yung nang tanong yun eh, totoo ba to? Ito nangyayari na ba?
Yes. Totoo na ba to?
And this is part of a global trend and criticism of privacy enforcement authorities, not just here, but also abroad, as to the number of enforcement activities that they have. Number one. Number two, I think there's a lot of Singapore envy that's going on. Because in Singapore, kung magpataw sila ng fines, wagas, ang bilis din. But even Singapore, when it revised its privacy law at the beginning of this year, moved away then from set fines. And they're going to percentages na rin. So that's something that's...
Okay.
Right? So it's a train that's coming. If you've been, listening on the ground, it's been coming for some time. And I'm sure they're gonna insist on it. So the fact that it's coming, yan, okay na. Sige, fine.
Okay.
Yeah, Arnie, actually, it will also add up the importance of DPOs in the organizations. So once you impose fines, means, important si privacy. So the organization would now have a conscious effort to really beef up their privacy compliance, and not just for compliance purposes, but also for the data subjects in general.
Yeah, we understand. Yung the urgency din. Kasi parang enough na ba yung pag-prepare sa culture, yung awareness? Enough na ba yung sa education? Or talagang this time, timely din na magkaroon na nitong administrative fines?
I think so. Because in general, the whole principle of fines, kasi marami yung tinuruan this year. I made around 200 plus certified DPOs. marami sa kanila are junior execs.
Okay.
So binato lang sa kanila, okay, ito intindihin mo data privacy, and then when really the DPO should have more power and more responsibility. And it's not something that's communicated well. And so if you continue on that and you do really shoddy paper compliance on data
Okay.
privacy, that's gonna get exposed now if you have a fine structure.
Okay, yeah. Agree din naman ako.
So,
Sa amin
on
sa education,
that,
nararamdaman ko na siya. Yeah. Agree, attorney.
principle-wise,
Good.
May tanong lang ako kay attorney, no, Sam, no? Meron bang appeal process yan? Or when it's handed down, it's handed with finality?
there is a provision there that says you have to pay even if you appeal, but you can't appeal. So that's like that dovetails with the recent decision on Comelec. Diba Comelec, the court there said, mali ang process na ginawa ni Chair Andy Bao, na you shouldn't have appealed this by Rule 43 because the commission wasn't acting as a quasi-judicial body.
Okay.
If so, yung pag-recommend ng is not done as a quasi-judicial body and the NPC is a quasi-judicial body, ano pala yung system na yon? Therefore, that points toward the ability of the commission to impose fines and impose other administrative remedies. So whether or not it can do it, I don't think that's something that's going to be that controversial. Lalo na at the hearing they were talking about this MTRCB ruling na the MTRCB in its statute does not have the power to impose fines. And yet the court said na the power to regulate also has the power to impose fines. Now, ang problem niyan is the problem to regulate and impose fines cannot be the power to confiscate. So which is why Sasa was saying earlier na confiscatory, na issue yun. Because for a lot of firms in the country, the operating margins are less than 5%. Lalo na nag-pandemic. If you have a business that goes above 5%, because the interest rate now, the official interest rate now is around 1 to 3, diba? Sasa. From the Bangko Sentral, it's around 1 to 3. Inflation is around, pag pumatak ng 10% yung inflation, magwawala ang Pilipinas. So what you want to do when you run a business is you need something that has percentage points greater than inflation. And as a business, if you're running 3 to 4 percentage points above inflation, if that's your markup, you commit one violation of data privacy, lugi ka.
Yep.
This is insurable, attorney, no? That means you can actually, yung fines can be covered by insurance policy. Is that possible?
I know data breaches are fines. I'm not so sure because that's a willful increase of insurable of the risk, right?
Yeah. In fact, there's an insurance commission circular that says they can fines are not insurable in first place. So yeah, so just the breaches, ganun lang.
Okay.
So it really puts pressure on businesses to comply, which we haven't seen since 2018. So that's a good thing. That commission is moving again and putting out things that are, that move the conversation forward. But are the levels that they came up with fair? That's a completely different story.
Yan na, marami nang tumatawag kay Attorney Kiko. Ano?
Yeah.
Kasi
May comment from Benedict Shanko here. He agrees daw. So, I don't know kung saan nag-agree si Benedict, but he agrees with you. So,
maybe putting on fines. Pero yung pandemic time, ano mo yung minsan talagang, although it's pa a week kasi,
The
kaya
timing,
siguro
that's correct.
nila ba?
Actually, because it's pandemic time, it's more important.
Okay, agree din
Because-
naman ako.
What you want to do is you want to increase trust in the whole ecosystem so you can give out your data, so you can do things remotely, so you don't have to go out anymore. If everyone is still doing bara data privacy, you get stuff like contact tracing failing. You get stuff like, all these issues na pag pumutok, laging tanong, anong gagawin nyo ngayon?
correct. Ang gusto ko lang diyan sa tiered, no? You're given another checklist, on what you can aspire for sa company. Nakalagay na doon kung ano yung dapat mong gawin eh. Di ba? At the same time,
Correct.
it's a direct message to your management. Kung ako BPO ako and I've been struggling for years to convince top management to invest and to respect the privacy of our customers and even our employees. Sir, ito, nalala mo dati, pwede kang makulong, di ba? Ngayon, magsasara yung business mo. So, like, that's the consequence. So, really, ako, I agree with the view of Attorney Kiko and the future Attorney Sasa na talaga, it's really good for the Filipinos and the data subjects as a whole, etc. So, yan, baka may tanong ka pa, Tito. So, in addition to that,
Well, actually, the answers were very clear, right? Ang importante na nga, by the way, one more question. Can a court challenge this one? Can you bring this to the higher court? You can,
Yes, you
right?
can. Yes, you can. This is something where the court, kasi the court already refused to challenge the NPC when it came to the crime. The crimes under, So, ibig sabihin nun, kung hindi ka pwede mag-challenge doon, saan ka pwede mag-challenge? Therefore, dito sa ganito, sa mga fines, kung tama ba yan, kung tama yung appreciation nila.
Sa mga nakikinig, no, kasi sa totoo lang, hindi pa naman gaanong umaabot ito sa level ng, sabihin na natin, mas nakakarami about the data privacy. Naririnig na siya. Ako na-appreciate ko na yung conscious na ang mga tao na ano ba yan, may consent ba yan. So that's a good sign. Pero can we itemize yung nandun mismo sa section 2 ng administrative fines para sa mga nakikinig sa atin? Kasi kanina pa natin binabanggit yung tier 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Ano tong mga 1% to 5% of your gross income na ipa-fine ka. Explain natin sa mga nakikinig para at least mas naiintindihan talaga nila.
Okay. So before ko explain further, just to also to clarify that the circular is only limited to private corporations or controllers. So yung government entities specifically carve out sila. So according to NPC, it's because we cannot charge, admin. Parang hindi mo pwedeng singilin yung kapwa mong gobyerno.
Ganon.
So yun.
Correct. Yeah.
But it's also a different discussion, which I think Attorney Kiko can also explore on that. But on the coming back on the admin fine, so tier 1 is para sa mga SMEs natin, no? So, para, kung may restaurant ka, yan, tapos kumuha ka ng orders, papa-deliver mo. Di controller ka na, diba? Kasi, ngayon, uso yan ngayon. So, 1% to 5% of your annual gross income, yun yung pwede mong, yun yung pwedeng impose sa'yo. Pag ginawa mo to yung, violation of general data privacy principles. So ano ba to? Yung mga legitimate purpose, transparency, proportionality. So meaning kung wala kang privacy policy sa restaurant mo, or may CCTV ka, hindi ka naglagay ng notice, yun, that's 1% to 5%. failure to comply with consent conditions under Section 3B of the DPA, and then violation of data subject rights under Section 16. So kung ngari, ni-request ng client mo na delete mo yung data ko sa sa processing system mo, tapos hindi mo ginawa, yun, rin yun, admin fine din yun. So, yun yung mga tier 1 natin. So, kung actually, yung example ko, puro SMEs, no? Pero if you think about it, ang mas affected din dito yung, of course, the bigger companies din, no? Kasi, syempre, parang, sundi lang namin na-delete, so, 1 to 5% na yung, yung i-admin file mo sa amin. So, kung nga ako, telco ko, di ba? Ang malaki yung, yun.
Actually, may isang
Malaki yun.
May isang case na nilapit sa akin before. Nagtanong ng may CCTV notice yung bank. Tapos yung yung CCTV na nakakabit dun sa ATM, props only. So wala talagang nakuhang data. So in this case, pag nangyari yun after the fines, yung in fact lang na hindi ka nag-ayos ng CCTV na walang na-capture when you said naka-capture, yun, that's 5%. Yung nasa nasa entry form mo, no? Yun na nga, since 2016, inaano ko na yung mother's maiden name. Pag nandun siya, bakit kailangan yun? Overcollection yun. So pag may overcollection issue ka sa yung forms, 5%. So ang medyo masakit, but considering kasi the amount of attention that people have been given to these issues. Okay, so dun tayo sa government officials. Kaya hindi kasama yung government officials is because iba yung basis for liability doon. Hindi mo matatakot yan sa fine on the institution. Matatakot yan sa career. So, ang is one of the first things na ginawa ni DepCom Dondi, siya yung prime author nito, is the first ever circular ng NPC, which is NPC Circular 1601, which requires which sets the standard for data processing in government offices. Now, 2016 pa lang yun, 2021 na sa kalendaryo, 5 years. So, pag may violation pa nun, that's already equivalent to gross negligence or grave misconduct na ang penalty, sipa ka sa trabaho. And that's on the head of agency, if not the head of agency, pababa.
Tanong ko, Attorney Kiko, about, kasi ang naging use case nito si Comelec, no? Anong update pala doon? Kumusta siya ngayon?
So, the Court of Appeals just decided it last week na they said na yung pag-appeal ni Andy Bao was wrong. Dapat dumiretso na siya sa DOJ kasi doon na yung kaso dapat eh. So, I don't think the NPC ever that, but that was the decision of the court, then so be it. Pero more or less, diretso na dapat siya. The problem is, Andy Bao is not in the Philippines. So, nagtatago pa rin siya somewhere. So, but he's the one who's responsible.
Yes. So, totoo siya, mga ka-BounceBack. May chilling effect eh, no? Totoo siya.
Sa NADPOP, definitely. Tama-tama.
If I can also share, yung sa Comelec, how it impacts the banks. Way back in 2016, when that happened, usual questions, di ba, sa verification, ano birthday mo, just maiden name, ganyan, before. So when that happened, so we just had to assume that everyone is compromised. So we had to change the verification modes na, like we implemented OTP, voice recognition, and so on and so forth. So may cost for us, not just for the banks, but also for other service providers, like for example, like in Meralco, diba, and Light Center. When you have to verify or authenticate a person, it adds an extra layer of burden And yun yung impact sa company. So my point here is really all data breaches is not isolated lang to a particular data controller. It affects everyone. And that kind of consciousness should be embedded by the DPOs and also the regulators, and most importantly the data controllers, because you have to have that kind of public responsibility na siya. It's not a corporate responsibility anymore. So
Very good point, Sasa. Ang ganda. Yeah, agree.
Tama
Very
yan.
good point.
Oo.
It's not isolated case.
Madami tayong mga MSMEs ngayon,
May
ano? So dagdag doon. Ito yung mga common practice na nakikita namin sa website, sa groups, no? Yung mga iba nagbebenta diyan, for example, humihingi sila doon sa chat. Oh, send me your name, your cellphone number, even yun. Again, for the education of our NADPOP and BounceBack. Ano yung mga potential risk doon? If you ask your customers online to post their personal details, even sometimes their government IDs, doon sa social media page mo, na marami nakakakitang iba. So, marami pa rin gumagawa niyan eh. So yun na. Again, Attorney Kiko, Sasa, please, weigh in on that one. Saka ano yung fine mo? Sana
magkakaroon ka ng letter. Magkakaroon ka ng love letter from the NPC.
Okay.
Meron akong mahabol na tanong sa dalawa, kay Sasa at kay Attorney. Yung sa data sharing agreement, pag nagkaroon ng breach, pwede ba maging ang capability pareha sila? O yung
Yeah.
in our
possible,
data sharing agreements, we impose
Correct.
that joint liability.
Yes.
Para
So it's also follows with
Hati
fines.
sila. Hati sa 5%? Or
Paano
The
computation sa doon?
The way
Go ahead,
you
please.
divide that burden is based on your negotiation skill, negotiating the data sharing agreement.
Okay.
What's important, ang lesson doon actually is, pag may ganyan, dapat yung kontrata umaabot sa Data Privacy Office. Hindi, usually pag ganun, di commercial terms, nagko-commercial terms na sila. So, di nila inaakyat or natatakot sila kasi mabusisi ang lahat ng DPO. Hindi ka pwede maging DPO kung hindi ka mabusisi sa kontrata.
Correct.
So, that, for them, especially when lalo na pag sales and marketing, ang tingin nila sa DPO, rubber stamp.
Correct.
So, tapos ipe-pressure ka nila. Ito, pa-review ng contract. Kaya ako na bukas kasi sa Friday na implementation yan.
I hear you.
I hear you.
Anong magandang sagot doon, Attorney Kiko? Paano sasagutin ng DPO yon? Anong sagot ng DPO?
Ang sagot ng DPO, noon una magagalit ka. Sabihin mo, may published turnaround times kami. Nandito sa policies, nandito sa privacy manual. Kaya important yung yung Figure 3, put a privacy manual.
Yes.
Dapat yun sa mga project owners and sa process owners. So pag pupunta sila sa'yo, minadali ka, may ka. Also, pag ganun, pag ginagawa ko kasi is, gusto mong madalian so taray mode on, tapos todo okray dun sa process. And then another thing that you can ask to prevent that from happening is you need to get green light power from management when it comes to these contracts. Lalo na pagdating ng fines ng ganito. And then, sasabihin kasi ng management, ba't hindi mo nakita? Nagka-fine tayo tuloy ng malaki. Pero if you're not given the power to check those contracts and check those provisions, diba? Pangga. So, you can really use it as a learning opportunity na habang ini-evaluate mo ng kontrata, may kasama kang malaking bar ng sabon.
Talagang papaliguan.
Sa akin naman, that green light button, it's applicable for me. Like, I'm part of the change management board. So, every time may change, may sign off I have a sign off. So, and also the contracts then, and yung attorney Kiko knows this, that we have been negotiating for some time before. That kind of visibility that you have to impose on your organization. So, for example, you're a DPO of a big company, pero kung SMEs ka, yung mga data sharing mo dyan kasi ang na-imagine ko, kung may partnership ka with, I don't know, Grab or Foodpanda or, di ba, retailer ka ng isang malaking application. So yun, in a way, data sharing yun eh. Siguro they will just ask you to sign up a terms and condition, pero you're actually sharing your customer data, your customer's information to that kind of application. So kailangan, alam mo rin na protected dapat yung data ng clients mo dun sa application na yun. And going back to Sam's question earlier on yung mga nagchat about, na-experience ko yun kasi nag-order ako ng yung mga food, yung medyo masasarap yung tsura. So sign up ako. They asked that, and then may record there. Sinasabi ko sa kanila na delete mo yung message ko after ha, kasi well, I will delete it, pero syempre malamang may record pa siya. Delete mo para secure din yung para hindi, alam mo na, kasi syempre it will also increase the trust of your customers pag alam ng customers na pinaprotect din mo as a SME yung data nila.
Yeah, tama. Yeah, thank you for that, Sasa. Meron tayong mga comments dito. So again, si Benedict commented. Pakita natin sa screen, So I think fines would really force organizations for an operational compliance rather than paper compliance. Thank you for that, Benedict. Okay, si Bon Talampas, meron din siyang tanong. Actually, para sa iyo, Sasa. It's called you, there's a cost in privacy implementation. Paano natin binabawi yung cost na ito? Yan, magandang question yan, So,
Very good question.
ang cost-benefit analysis. Sige nga. So, cost center pa ang Data Privacy Office.
Okay. So, I will always say to my bosses that once we increase the trust of the clients to our products and services, they will just not be encouraged to use it, but they will also tell their friends, their family, "Uy, gamitin mo to, ganyan, okay to, they're protecting my privacy." So, in a way, siya, word of mouth, or probably, I don't know, by a Facebook post, maraming ma-interested dyan. And in fact, during the pandemic, then, our account opening, not just for the banks, for our bank, but also across all naman, nag-increase yung online account opening. So I think because then yung trust factor in the account opening, or they find the application trustworthy, and that will also increase customers. Yan.
Tama, Oo.
Tsaka,
yun talaga.
Yeah, may tanong pa ako, Sam. Can I ask?
You're not a cost center. Dapat as data privacy, you're a cost-cutting center. Kasi ang daming processes na gustong gawin, marketing, na don't really have tangible results. What you're doing in data privacy is you're trying to increase the efficiency of whatever it is that you do, all these marketing efforts. So you're ensuring that the target audience is receptive. You're ensuring that when you get that data, your legal bases are covered. So pagdating ng dulo, it's still, you look at the cost as 5% of your gross. Iniwasan mo yun.
And sakto sa team naman, di ba? Yeah. Yes, it is. Ito lang, yung team kasi ng ng PAO 2021, valuing privacy in the time of digital transformation, di ba? Tapos meron siyang tatlong team na that which are our panelists are actually pointing out, protecting Filipinos, promoting economic recovery, and building trust. Yung pangatlo ang tinatawan kasi talaga there's trust on online services. Magkakaroon talaga ng ng economic activity online, right? And then it starts really with that. Tama ka sa site talaga. Trust should be there. Dahil if you don't trust a site, di ba, napaso ka na. Like yung kwento ng isang Grab, di ba? Yung dinelivery ng isang delivery food driver, after a while, meron siyang tawag. Yung pala, kinuha yung phone number niya. Sabi, hi! Nagpapakilala na yung kasi ang ganda ng delivery niya, etc. Those are breaches, di ba? So at the same time, it takes really the top management to share, di ba, the data privacy provisions down to their frontliners and staff, no? Kasi sila yung nag-handle sila ng personal information, di ba? Tama, no? So, yun, I'm sure in both of your organizations, in Meralco and Union Bank, you've already cascaded data privacy several times, right? Alam ko, paulit-ulit yan na every year, do you have a refresh or even every quarter? So, even tuloy-tuloy talaga, no? So, yun. Merong interesting question lang si Benedict Chanco. Okay, I'll put again. Okay, is it more advised to assign DPO to legal and compliance head than the IT head? Ayan, di ba yung mga... And ito pa, may si Bon, magandang tanong din to, nakakatuwa. Attorney Kiko, for you, can we charge certain fee for data protection? Parang internal charging yata itong gusto ni Bon Talampas, no? So, yeah, again, we're still on the topic of fines, no? Pero there's subtopics that we're pursuing. So, ayan, again, yung classic question, nasaan ba dapat ang DPO? Nasa legal compliance o nasa head of IT? Yun ang tanong ni Benedict. And si Bon naman, again, going back to his earlier question na yung cost center doon, ang DPO office, can they charge naman daw internally? Probably, internal yun sa kanilang mga colleagues that they're serving. No? So, yan. Again, yung para lang masagot natin yung mga tanong ng ating mga audience. Okay?
In some jurisdictions like Germany, HR cannot be the DPO. IT cannot be DPO. That's because, and I would say also head of legal cannot be DPO because there are certain things that will require you to take a contrary position to your employer. So you're not acting on the best interest of the employer. You're always acting in the best interest of the data subject. That's the difference between a DPO and a lawyer.
Okay.
Now, when we teach the NADPOP course, one of the things that we always say is na if you're double hatting as a DPO, magamang conflict of interest ka because you're most likely, if you're that high, you're a process owner. So the only person who really has the ability to double hat as a DPO is the president and CEO.
Okay.
Yup. Actually, dapat, like me, I'm dedicated DPO. And in fact, I think it also inspired other banks and other companies to also set up their own DPO. Kasi before, it's usually concurrently held by an ops series head or legal or compliance head or IT. And I would always say that there will always be conflict eh. For example, yung pinaka-common compliance head, compliance with BSP. So there are times that we have to disclose certain information with our regulator. And then I would say, hindi naman kailangan ng iba dito. So, ganong kalasing check and balance yung kailangan kasi for all organizations. So, kaya I suggest na dedicated talaga siya. And in fact, I noticed that some corporations then are now putting up their own DPO organizations, which I find I'm very happy about it kasi more DPOs to talk to, confide with, and so on.
Tama.
Yes.
Pero comments nila lang. Yep. May comments si Miguel Malvartitos. Ito. Miguel Malvar IV, correct, Attorney Kiko, pero prevailing mindset dahil porket batas, lawyer kagad dinis ng DPO. Yung CISO ba, hindi pwedeng DPOs, okay? May follow-up naman to, hindi lumabas yung kanyang another one of our audience then. Okay, many DPOs, a little no voice, in the company organization that they are in. Most DPOs are doing dual or multi-roles in their company organization. will be better for competitive position stress. Yan. Again, just enforcing yung sinabi ng dalawa, no? Again, so, yan, lumalabas talaga that really, I think best practice itong kay Sasa sa inyo. Really, you have your own office, you're independent, right? With the other lines of businesses. So, this is the best setup talaga for a DPO. Okay? Yes, Titus.
Meron lang akong gusto dagdag sa mas madali on the side kinasasa to be able to say, kailangan natin DPO office, okay, kay Atty. also, because malaki kayo eh. But more on the MSMEs, 25 people, 50 people kayo, tapos ang meron kang DPO, tapos mag-hire ka pa, wala sa plantilla, that becomes an issue. I've been asked before, sir, ano unahin ko? Privacy o payroll? Until question, matindi question yun.
Exactly why
So,
if you're as an MSME or lower, it should be the head, it should be your president or COO who should be because siya yung may visibility on lahat ng processes, and eventually pag nagkaturoan siya. Okay, but if you pass a certain stage in your development and you are handling so much data versus the 5%, isusugal mo yon. That's why the fines are important.
Correct. Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Actually, Tito,
Diyan napapasok yan. Yung fines.
I think yung size ng company is an indicator on the amount of data that you're holding or controlling.
Yeah, it's not.
May mga small and medium lang dyan na they have millions of data at their disposal and they're keeping it. MSME sila. So it's not the size of the organization, it's the amount of data that you are controlling and keeping and not protecting. That's the key. Pwede ka talagang mawala, pwede kang mabura yung business mo kung magkaroon ka ng data breach and with the new fines in place.
Yeah. Theoretically, hindi bawal yung parang marang multiple positions for a DPO. I don't think there's something in the law that actually says hindi ka pwedeng dalawang position mo. Dapat DPO ka na. Walang ganun sa eh. But the issue then becomes is when we do the privacy audit, lalabas na may conflict of interest. Obvious na lalabas doon. If there are multiple roles, meron bang parang okay, we allow you, but after 1 year, you have to find one. Meron bang gano'n na dapat nating gawin? O
may grace period. Meron bang grace period?
Parang may grace period na transition period.
Kanya-kanyang culture yan eh. And kanya-kanyang weaknesses yan. You have to understand na pag inassign mo yan, double hat process owner yan, may conflict of interest siya. You have to find a way na maikutan mo yung conflict of interest na yun kasi malamang yung data breach mo or yung violation mo doon manggagaling sa office niya. Yung sa day job niya.
May tanong ako kay Sasa. Sasa, pagka ba nag-a-apply ka ng loan, hinihinga ka ba ng privacy manual? Sa kung business loan ka. Kasi added risk na yun di ba? Especially with the fines coming in. Yung pwede yung nag-loan sa inyo, isang data breach lang, wipe out siya. And then the loan goes away with that company. So,
yeah, there are times, especially mga fintech companies, no? So, every time may certain partnerships or that kind of application, we at least ask warranties. So for are you registered with the NPC? Do you have a privacy manual and so on? And yeah, I understand, no? Parang yun na yung trend ngayon kasi parang with the fines, it'll add up risk exposure not just for them but also for the banks in case there's a breach sa kanila, diba? And then we also invested there and so on. But coming back from another question, whether the CISO can be DPO. For me, no. Kasi there are sometimes I have arguments or conflict with the CISO. Because for example, they want to execute certain security measures that will infringe some privacy of the employees. I would sometimes say, wait lang. Wala pang yan. We have to ask for consent first from the employees for us to get those kinds of data from them. Lalo na ngayon, work from home. There are some tools that would kind of invasive for some, diba? So, those are the things that, for me, medyo conflict of interest. So, I suggest no then. But, if your SMEs or a small fintech company, probably it's permissible, but, as much as possible, i-carve out siya. Yeah, probably the president or CEO would be the one to be the DPO. But I just want to cite some practical example as to how he cannot the CISO cannot be DPO.
Um,
Yes. Ah.
as an example, there's this major company na while I was still inside the commission. Tapos, yung ginawa nila, their first approach was the CISO was the DPO. Because of that, their direct competitor was able to leapfrog their data privacy program by years. So now, the direct competitor is 2 years ahead and pulling away in terms of data privacy, where it really matters, instead of the lip service that they have.
Yes. Yeah, kaya pala, di ba sa may mga framework kasi ngayon na sineseparate yung governance and management, no, to avoid bias, yung governance and management. So, dito nakita ko na pwede palang sa mga SMEs, pwedeng may crossover kasi nga kung maliit lang naman sila, yung CEO pwedeng bumaba on the management task for that. Kasi, ang best practice kasi to avoid conflict, to avoid corruption is the separation of the governance to management. So, dito nakita ko as part of the academe, no? Kasi ang culture kasi o yung pagsunod dito sa batas, malaki ang role ng academe. Preparing these knowledge workers. Seryoso ang fines, may value ang fines na to, yung administrative fines na to. Actually, ito na talaga yung the game changer for the data privacy, no? Seryosohin mo siya and then sunod-sunod na. Kung yun yung tinitingnan mo, syempre matatakot ka, pandemic na, wala ka namang gaanong kita, and then of course you want to deliver value, pero andito lagi si privacy. So, pero the secret is, I think, seryosohin mo na siya, no? Seryosohin mo yung Data Privacy Act and then the fines. Siguro pag gano'n ang tinitingnan ko, lahat ng galaw ko, tama na. Kung ako yung SME.
Ngayon, ang matinding issue ngayon yung vaccine rollout. Yung, so for example, for companies, so we have to also ask certain information of people. And then it will also involve pharmaceutical companies, the logistics partner, the LGU, ang dami-dami. And so there's this consensus, I'm very happy about it, that everyone is amenable to have a data sharing agreement. Like everyone is responsible for the data of the employees who have availed of the vaccine program, and those kinds of conscious effort really to protect the privacy. It resonates not just because of this of the pandemic, but also because yung sa fines or that there's a corresponding admin fines or NPC would penalize eventually if and when this would be messy and so on. So yun yung mga nakita kong developments ngayon na coming from your city.
Tama yan. Sasa, balikan natin yan kasi yung healthcare issues sa pandemic bago ba tayo magtapos, we've been discussing yung fines. When will it take effect? Nakita ko na yung nagpabid na si NPC for newspaper publications. Kailan mag-take effect yung administrative fines? Attorney Kiko din, no? Sasa?
30 days after.
Okay. So pag lumabas sa mga dyaryo, di ba yun ang
30 days after.
Nakita ko na yung bidding Nagpabid na si NPC ng for ad publication So magbibilang na tayo 30 days after. Meron ba siyang retroactivity, Attorney Kiko? Sasa?
Yan, good question, Sam. Good question.
So wala, no?
Wala.
So pwede po mag-petics.
I would say na because to achieve that level of compliance, bitin ang 2 months, you start now.
Tama. Yan So narinig niyo po mga ka-NADPOP sa ka-Bounce, sa ka-PH-CERT, you should have done it last year. No, 5 years ago when the law took effect, di ba? May tanong po to from maganda magta-transition tayo sa healthcare kasi marami nangyayari sa healthcare pa rin. May tanong po itong si Mr. Kim, Moby Kim. Yan, may i-verify po regarding the required population ratio for appointing a DPO in one institution. Ang sa follow-up niya, specifically for a hospital setting requirement, nasa healthcare po, ang ating NADPOP ka-BounceBack ng Kino. Tatanong siya, may ratio daw ba?
No, if
ng
you have
pag-appoint ng
a
DPO?
hospital or healthcare
Hospital.
facility, you need a DPO. That's not based on how many patients you have. Because you're holding medical data. And medical data is one of the most sought after information anywhere.
Yeah.
And the reason you do that is because if you have medical data, you can sell anyone anything. And you can manipulate that person to whatever. So no.
Correct. Napaka-intimate.
Hospital setting,
sensitive.
automatic.
Thank you, Attorney Kiko. Okay. Tapos tayo sa points, mag-shift naman tayo sa healthcare, no? I'm sure you've heard of the story of this lady, di ba? Who got herself a job in one of the, we won't mention the cities, ano? So, and then after a while, itong si Miss Lady, merong nag-message sa kanya. Yung isa sa mga staff na nandun sa meron siyang fan, no? So message siya, etc. Alam niya yung name niya, na-compare ito. And then later on, eventually, tuloy-tuloy. So pinost niya yung conversation nila na yon sa social media. And then tatanong nga siya, bakit ganito? Diba? You're supposed to protect my information. Bakit yung staff nyo, minessage ako without my consent, etc. So nakaabot na siya dun sa LG actually. Yan, so nakita kita, Attorney Kiko, nag-comment ka sa string na yon. In that incident, it's not common, di ba? It's the same incident, for example, as someone who delivered food to you and who knows your numbers, saw you personally, found you attractive, for example, and started to be friendly. Di ba? Kasi meron na siyang data mo. So again, in that scenario right now, especially most LGUs are still, driving vaccination processes. And yung data doon, napaka-open. Walang standard actually on how to protect data yet. Di ba? Yet. Wala pa, di ba? So again, your take on that one. So Attorney Kiko and Sasa.
May standard to protect the data. Circular 1601. Obviously, hindi nasunod yun. And dapat nag-kick in yung breach management protocol nila. I saw that some action was taken, but I'm sure that's not part of the breach management protocol.
Yeah, I think there was a lapse in awareness for dun sa grassroots eh. So I guess it's something that maybe NADPOP or we can do like have an awareness campaign to those healthcare workers. So probably they're not that aware na for me malicious disclosure under data privacy because for the benefit parang for a person's benefit na siya. And it's not isolated lang. Parang we've been seeing this kind of issues for some time. Like mga food deliveries and so on. Just because you have access to data, you cannot use it for your own benefit. That's the thing that I think needs to be translated to the grassroots properly. So hindi lang parang and then I guess I'm happy then that it was brought to our attention. Parang this girl actually provides public awareness of data privacy. Buti nga sinayit niya, I'm happy about it. Actually, nung pandemic, nag-increase na yung awareness ng mga tao sa privacy.
May nangyaring issue yun before, di ba? Ginawang news story, yung police tinikita niya yung rider. Tapos eventually, nagagawa niya yung rider, kinasal niya. And yung news story nag-pick up, yung angle nung una, romantic. Tapos, ang dami nag-comment, data privacy, and toxic behavior yun, and so on. So, nakakatuwa na the awareness is there, and the people themselves are spreading it around.
Natulfo pa nga yan eh. Merong episode sa Tulfo on data privacy. Ang taas ng hits nung episode na yun. Kasi parang pinost nung rider yung number at saka address nung dineliveran niya. So, ang daming nagpapadala doon. Ginagamit na yung address
Aray.
at number yun. Yes. I-recall ninyo, data privacy yun. So, sabi ni Tulfo, ayan, this is against data privacy. Yeah. Ang dami nang aware on that. Anyway, yeah. Ako, Kiko, Attorney Kiko, na-excite ako kasi mas maganda nga palang session. Hindi na on the awareness, what to do, for compliance. Ano na dapat ngayon? Administrative fines na ang pag-uusapan. I think this is the shortcut na of education. Yun agad, fines agad usapan.
Correct. Your business will close, no? Your business will close, diba?
Pabalik.
Correct. In fact, yung day 2, no, may mga countries na nag-share na kanilang best practices, diba?
Yes.
So, on how they've been handling the pandemic, no? So, maganda rin talaga. Ang dami talagang best practices worldwide that we can adopt in the Philippines, no? For healthcare and other vertical industries, no? Kaya yan, hopefully, yun nga yung sa PAO 2022, diba? Iba na yung tenor, no? Baka doon na sabihin na nila, these are the numbers of businesses that closed. We've raised this several billions of pesos in fines, di ba? Baka ganun na yung tenor, oh. Ano pa yung nakita yung highlights doon? Yeah, Attorney Kiko, Sasa. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think papasok dyan yung Singapore envy natin. Kasi, naalala ko, there's this case that we use in class na yung messengerial service. After na-fine siya ng Singapore government, nagsara siya. Kasi, una, malaki yung fine. Pangalawa, yung business niya from all the customers that it had, nawala na. So, if there's anything that really looks like a threat to the existence of your business, take it seriously.
Yun, definitely. Ang daming case studies nga na maganda sa Singapore. Actually, nakakatakot siya for a business person. So, and you don't like it to happen to you. One small mistake, di ba? So, it can bring your business down right now. Okay, ano pa? Yung napanood yung di ba? Yung report ni Chairman Mon, Attorney Kiko and Sasa. So, last week discuss din namin yun with your other two colleagues. But what left out dun sa report ni Chairman Mon sa inyong dalawa? So, ano yung tumatak sa inyo?
Sasa, you first.
Yes. So, ako kasi medyo nakita ko na yung some snippets in advance kasi I'm part of the Data Privacy Executive Council. So, treasurer ako doon, si Ms. Leia, Lynn, Danny, Angela are also my co-officers, no? So, basically, what I find interesting is, the pivot to approach from awareness education to really to expand the enforcement and the mandate. Kasi to be honest, ang problem ng DPOs, while we have circulars, regulations, and so on, it will not be taken seriously by the management if it's not enforced properly. So, no matter how much we say, we have to do this, we have to invest this, and so on, once they see a strong enforcement authority to set out, for us to compel us to follow or obey the rules, they won't be taken seriously. So ngayon, the plan or the strategic pivot to that is something that I find welcoming, no? Especially, as DPO, parang, okay, meron na akong ammo. Alam mo, when I go to my stakeholders, you have to do this kasi, compliance. Whereas before, wala naman yun paper lang yan diba? So ngayon, nakikita na nila yung actual implementation ng law. Yun yung tumatak sa akin.
Yeah.
Let me add something, Sam. Okay. Okay. May I add something lang? There's a concept called the prophet is never recognized in his own hometown. Ang ibig sabihin is basically, how come for some organizations naniniwala sila sa consultant kasi employee, pero parehas ng sinasabi. That becomes that happens a lot of times. So I think that this may be self-serving, but the thing is, I've always recommended this one. Let someone else outside of your office discuss the matter about the work of the DPO to the management. Because the moment you become the messenger, o ikaw yung nagpapadala, ang tingin nila sa'yo, hindi, kaya mo sinasabi yan kasi, kasi gusto mong bumida eh. Yun ang madalas kong marinig eh. But when the issue, or when the job, or when the requirement is mentioned by someone who is outside the office, like a consultant, maganda ang dating sa management. Kasi someone now is basically parang, you need a third-party endorser. And that becomes very effective when it comes to compliance with privacy. I'm basing this on for experience, guys. That's I've been seeing this one over and over again. Sabi ng DPO, matagal ko na sinabi sa inyo, sir, hindi ayaw kayo maniwala sa akin eh. And that statement has been repeated 1,000 times. I don't know how many times already. But the issue there again, right now, is to be able, how do I make the messenger, make the message more acceptable to the management? And tayo, maganda yan. Kaya approve ako sa Pines eh. Because that is the message. The moment you have the Pines, the game change. It's a game changer. Yes, please.
Yeah, kaya may NADPOP.
Yeah, we've been offering our members, no?
Yes.
We've been telling our members na if you need help to present to your top management, you can bring any one of us. Yan. Hilahin na rin natin si Attorney Kiko saka si Future Attorney Sasa pag mag-explain, no? Ito yung isang audience natin, pabalik, no? Mukhang kailangan niya ng tulong kasi ito, look at his question, ipopost ko na uli, basahin natin. Yan, si Kim again. In addition, is there a standard of the required number of needed DPOs considering that the hospital says the highest possible risk in terms of data breach? Would be one DPO enough in regards to Mr. B. Kim, umattend po kayo ng training ng NADPOP, no? So para po matulungan po namin kayo, di ba? What will be the best number of DPO in this case to cover the entire institution? Meron pong strategy tayo on how to, roll out, a culture of privacy in your organization. Matututunan niyo po yun. We can discuss this po in succeeding episodes ng FightBack ng BounceBack Privacy Friday. So, ito rin si Gerby. Again, kinuwento din niya yung pinag-usapan natin kanina of that lady whose data was breached when she got her. So, kinakwento na ito. Gerby, magandang gabi sa iyo. No? Ang maganda nga dito is that alam nung data subject or nung lady na na-breach ang kanyang privacy. Okay? So, na-violate ang kanyang privacy right. Yun ang maganda doon. So, if it happens to you, alam niyo na yung gagawin. Yan. Okay? So, galing. No? Talagang tumataas na talaga awareness eh. So, yung ACE, iba na ngayon. Awareness, compliance, and end of the world na pala. Yung E, So,
Hindi. Meron akong tanong sa dalawa. Bakit naiiwan yung ethics? Meron ka accountability, meron kang compliance, pero yung ethics parang iniilagan.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, actually excited ako dito, no? Kasi I'm also doing ethics as in-expand na yung role ko actually from DPO, AI and data policy. So, including fairness, ethics, accountability, transparency, FIAT. So we incorporated ethics in the assessments, no. So especially on the AI part, fairness, gender bias. So for example, if you want to avail of a loan, we're studying now whether gender bias is incorporated in those kinds of processing. Because to be honest with you, hindi siya sinasadya. Sometimes yung bias natin, cultural eh. So, akala mo, okay lang siya. Pero, you have to, we're studying with, actually with experts, with consultants here, that they're actually processing that we inadvertently have bias in it. So, we have to, it's not technically privacy, but, it pays a lot of attention, or it's actually customer centric for us to know whether in a way accuracy din yun, diba? In a bigger scheme of things in privacy. So we have to take into consideration yung ethical part of it. But yeah, it's actually a good it's a good discussion. It's one of the things that really I'm excited about. Like, for example, ngayon yung mga facial recognition, there are some jurisdictions that are now banning this kind of technology because of racial discrimination, gender bias, and so on and so forth. So maraming issue. And those are the things that in the future magiging, I think, prevalent issue on privacy. So there, it must be. So I think slowly from privacy ethics. So magandang discussion yan actually.
Oo, napakaganda at mahirap din. Si attorney please.
Yeah, ethics really should be a big component of how you do how you manage your own privacy culture inside your organization. So if you have accountability, compliance, in the end, it's not going to work without ethics, because the motivators for people to do what they do, if you do it by fear, if you lose the fear motivator, wala. So you need ethics there to have this idea na, di ba sa Art of War na Sun Tzu says that you have to have this moral good that your troops can rally behind, and then they will fight for you. So in the same way, that's the role that ethics plays. You act as the conscience for the way you handle your data. So may iwanan siya if you look at it on paper. But once you start running it, then yeah, it goes into your integrity, into your honesty, with how your company or your organization sees itself.
Yeah, ang totoo Sam, the policy will never be able to run at the same pace as technology. Laging naiiwan yung matagal yung policy. So naunang technology. Wala kang sasalo. Ethics will do it for us. At end of the day, that is parang safeguard yun eh. When things can no longer be explained by the law, ethics steps in. Yun ang feeling ko dyan. No? That's the only way it's going to be done. Sam, si Father Sam pala, please. Brother Sam.
Father Sam. Actually, Titus, with ethics, either you have it or not eh. Ganun talaga yan.
Correct.
So, since you're a child talaga, you acquire it as you grow up, di ba, etc. Merong interesting question dito from, again, shift tayo, from Edmond Deles, okay? Edmond is part of the community pantry. How about cross-border or cross-country data sharing? Is this covered by the data privacy law? Is there a body where institutions will go through to secure clearance, for example? So, yan, question from Edmond, okay? Yan, cross-border. Oo. In
the Philippines, we don't have cross-border, we don't have data localization, because what we have instead is long-arm jurisdiction. So, because it doesn't make sense to put in a data localization position when you can go out anyway and reach across the oceans to seek justice. Then, most of the time, if you have a criminal law like the Data Privacy Act, if something happens beyond your borders, wala ka nang say doon. However, because there's a general recognition that data is borderless, that's reflected in our law. So whenever there are Filipinos whose data is being processed abroad, or whenever Filipino data is brought about for processing, then that is covered under the Data Privacy Act. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah. May tanong ako. So, sabi mo kasi, Attorney Kiko, the ethics may not reflect on paper, pero sa execution, nandun siya. So, may framework ba na pwedeng makita yung balance with transparency, privacy, and ethics? May framework ba na pwedeng sundan?
Meron rin bang competency yun?
Yeah.
That's a core competency yun. But is there? The idea is you do the right thing by your data subjects.
Okay.
You have to, you go back to the transparency, legitimate purpose, proportionality.
Okay. Yun na lang sapat na. Yeah.
There's there's an Atenean concept that I like using, called magis, which means the more. What is the more that I can do for my data subject? How do I show to my data subject that I am trustworthy, that I can be trusted with their data? Everything
Well
flows from
said.
there. Sa Pilipinas kasi, what we want is sinuspoon feed sa atin eh. So ito yung batas, ito yung nakasulat. So paano ako makahanap ng palusot? That's not how it works in data privacy. Data privacy works na, ako may prinsipyo ako, ito yung prinsipyo ko, magiging tapat ako sa prinsipyo ko. And if you follow that, you're safe. And
Thank you, Paul.
ano nga yun eh, nakakain ba yung prinsipyo mo? Oo, 5% ng kita mo last year.
Tama. Oh.
Yeah, Miss Arnie, just to
Correct.
add on that kind of is there a framework? Actually, it's an emerging discourse. So I haven't seen like a tangible framework, but I'm in college. Ang course ko philosophy. So ethics is one of my core domain, and in fact, I did my thesis in UST. Tumasyan yung aking ethics thesis. And it helped me a lot in determining policy. So, the thing with ethics is that it's determined by laws, regulations, and also yung value judgment. So, for example, yung kanina example ko, gender bias. Sometimes, we call it fairness by exclusion. So, if you want to be fair, don't ask for gender data. So yung those are the things that I think mag-intersect yung privacy and ethics and transparency. So those kind of framework, but it's also on a case-to-case basis. I haven't seen really like a tangible one, except that one that we're using for the Veritas Consortium, which is very exclusive lang for financial institutions, but not for others.
Yes.
Sasa,
I just
tinanggal
hope-
niyo pa yan, no? Tinanggal niyo na ba yung religion dun sa bank application?
Except bank assurance. Pag insurance kasi kailangan ng religion. Sa claims kasi kailangan.
Oh, right.
May ibang religion kasi pag mag-claim, kung yung spouse, yung iba, diba, more than one. So, yun.
Okay. So, talaga, may legitimate purpose, di ba? Akala ko,
May legitimate purpose naman siya.
But
not for all.
Mas magbabayad, di ba? Mas
It's not for all.
magbabayad.
The general rule is no, except, may legitimate purpose.
Oo. Galing. Ako balik ko lang sa cross-border, no? Both of your companies, you have foreign customers, di ba? So, how do you protect their personal information? For example, taga-Europe yung isang banking client mo sa cover ng GDPR. Si Atty. Kiko naman, taga-California. So, taga-California privacy law. So, how do you protect them in their privacy rights? So,
Yung framework natin is more stringent eh.
Yeah.
So, you just follow ours, pasok ka dun.
Okay.
In the banks naman, we follow BSP rules. So, all data must not just be residing here in the Philippines, or it can be cloud, but you still have to seek approval from BSP to approve that. So we know where the data will be located and so on. And most of the time, our framework is ngayon API na. So tokenize yung mga nalalabas and so on. So in case of breach, knock on wood, they won't see anything. There's just tokens. But so far wala pa. But it's a secure platform. That's why ngayon in demand yung APIs kasi it's a more secure way of transferring data. And then also it follows the proportionality rule, meaning kukunin ko lang yung data or API na kailangan ko. Yun lang.
Ayan, maganda. Alam mo Tito San Arnie, itong dalawa nating panelists ngayon, they're also tech people, right? Oo, so babalik tayo dito yung privacy and technology, So babalik yan si Atty. Kiko sa si Sasa, no? In fact, yung session na ni Sasa, hindi natin discuss di ba? You had the technical panel discussion during day 1 Sasa sa hapon, So pwede natin balikan yon yung AI, So tama-tama siya. Oo. We're actually 6:25, we're about to close in 5 minutes. So again, any last things that you want to share, what left, what really hit you from the heart dun sa PAO 2021? Latest to, before we close our Fight Back and Privacy Fridays. Okay?
Una
Attorney
ka.
Kiko? Oh, sige. Sasa daw. Sasa.
Nasa na muna.
Alright. Well, what hit me most is the increasing number of participants. So I've been attending PAO every year, and I initially thought that since the breakout session, konti lang, but umabot kami ng I think 400 plus. And in a breakout session lang yun. And maraming breakout sessions yun. So I think 5 of us. So imagine multiply it by 5. Ang dami nun. Plus, people who are also viewing it in one screen. And I'm happy that, it's the awareness of not just DPOs but the data controllers and the public are increasing, especially in the pandemic. And we actually welcome the fines, no. We just wanted it to be proper para yung pag-implement tama, and of course sana hindi siya masyadong excessive para hindi confiscatory in nature. However, I'm also happy that the NPC is very open, no. Actually forever ko silang kinokollect about let's set a meeting ganyan, not just with the DPOs but also with the groups that we're also aligned with or in membership of, and they're open, and they also recognize that privacy right now is an emerging one still, and enforcement of the circulars and the regulations are equally more important, actually not equal, more important for DPOs eh. It's as I mentioned earlier, it's easier for us to have that teeth in our organizations if the enforcement is being upheld properly and implemented, and then the circular should be not vague. So when they say ito yung violation, it shouldn't be citing a particular provision, but for example, you fail to have an inventory of data processing system, so ito yung fine. You fail to appoint a DPO, ito yung fine. Those are the things that we wanted to push for. So we won't lose in the translation, or parang baka sayang pa sa oras na magpa-file ka pa ng case sa Supreme Court, mag-ask for ruling, ano ba to, vague ba to or not, di ba? So marami pang time for that. That's why we wanted to do it properly, and para hindi siya vague. And also I also welcome the DPOs to welcome this kind of development and to engage our regulator, and join NADPOP. You learn a lot from I call NADPOP my AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. Sometimes, di ba,
Privacy Anonymous.
I like that.
Privacy Anonymous. For mental health din, sometimes you have to, to have an avenue to air your challenges, your grievances as DPO.
Right.
Kasi we all share the same sentiments. And
Agree.
yan, NADPOP helped me a lot on that. So, yun, join.
Here's to that. Wala
Salamat,
tayong
Sasa.
deal, Sasa.
Oo,
Thank you,
may
Sasa.
kapel.
Salamat. May gabi ka ba? Sige, oo. Attorney Kiko. Yan.
Ayun, short note kung ano yung tumama sa akin sa it's that there was I like the focus this year. I like that there was extra attention given to the fines, and that there's really this effort to include the public, especially the DPO community, when responding to what the fines, and how what struck me more is our response, collective response, that we're all supportive of the fines. We're just differing on the degree and the specificity, which is a good conversation to have. And it should always be a conversation, and that us DPOs, we should step up to the plate and be part of that conversation, as opposed to letting it get decided for us. We have more power than we think. So yeah.
Yes, ako naman.
Thank you. Yeah, Arnie, please. Yes.
Yeah,
Oo.
it's good to know that, yeah?
Bubukin na. Di ba, crush mo si Chairman
Me?
Mon, di ba, Arnie?
Okay. It's good to know that the Philippines is leading the GPA, di ba? Si Mon ang leader ng Global Privacy Assembly.
Number one fan ni Mon si Arnie sa NADPOP. Oops, nawala si
Wala.
si Arnie. Okay, Titos. Mukhang nag-time out yung internet.
Okay.
He's back. Okay.
Ayun. Philippines is the lead for the GPA. That's good. Kahit stern yung task ni Mon, at least yung charm niya, nagagamit niya, kahit seryoso yung trabaho na to, napapasunod niya din yung mga practitioners. Yeah, di ba? And then the other one is, I am happy na sana with this program that we can derive at a framework sa mga natututunan natin dito sa Privacy Fridays and FightBack Cybersecurity. And what else? And it's good to know then there's a good side yung sa fines, no? Sa administrative fines. May magandang good news dyan. No? And then what else? And I just hope that we can create Junior Kiko and Junior Sasa. No? Sana meron pa sana makadevelop tayo ng mga ganyan tulad nila. Nasa-simplify ang mga bagay-bagay. And then, sana marami akong maibigay sa inyo na learners. Na-excite ako na matuto sila from you, Kiko and Sasa. That's my take on the Privacy Week.
Thank you. Pwedeng privacy interns, no? Professor Arnie Barcelo, UST.
Yes.
Galing yan. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiko. Thank you, Sasa.
Batang-batang, poging-poging Titos Manuel. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Ang maturity is beginning to show. The mere fact we're progressing to yung fines shows yung maturity. If we have done it earlier, maybe maraming nag-complain. Pero that actually, ang feeling ko, that is the game changer. The timing is right. There may be some missing points, but the timing is just perfect because it gives a boost to compliance, no, from top to bottom yan. So, yun lang, Sam. But that was a great one. Thank you.
Yep, I echo your sentiments, no, really. Compared to last year's, really, this is way and above, this is a world-class event. And nakita nyo naman pati mga speakers sa atin talaga world-class. So, I won't talk much kasi in succeeding, we won't talk about PAO anymore, but, there's a lot of topics really. If you notice, 5 years pa lang ang privacy practice sa Pilipinas. And yet, the body of work that's emerging already is helping not just the Philippines, but other countries as well. So again, mga ka-NADPOP, ka-PH-CERT, hindi naka-join dito sa kasi Abet ngayon. Maraming salamat po. And of course, mga ka-BounceBack, tuloy-tuloy lang po, i-announce po namin ang aming scholars. Ayan, si Attorney Kiko po, you'll be one of your teachers. Si Future Attorney Sasa, invite din natin na magsalita dun sa NADPOP BounceBack Scholarship Program. Of course, Titos and Arnie, my colleagues in NADPOP. Again, magandang gabi sa mga manonood po ng replay. Huwag niyong kalimutan to, panoorin niyo po. And then once again, let's make Fridays, Privacy Fridays, and let's fight back with cybersecurity. Salamat po, Attorney Kiko and Sasa, for joining us today. Hopefully, you'll join us po in the next Privacy Fridays. Magandang gabi. And Pilipinas, Privacy Fridays tayo. Okay. By the way, Sean, thank you. Thank you for Sean for managing the stream. And happy birthday, Sean. Thank you very much for managing our stream today. He has been managing the BounceBack and NADPOP streams. Sa back end po si Sean is my eldest. So, Sean, you can play the video now. Okay.
Salamat.
Thank you.